Go Catch a Goose, Chapter 9. Deku was awake with a fresh wave of energy. His limbs moved light and agile. Last week's sore shoulders floated away like a distant cloud. Clarity infused his senses, bringing out beats of pop music emanating from downtown shops, the light bending into rays of colors that bounced off high-rise windows, the taste of matcha and sugar. Smooth, soft, sweet, lingering half an hour after his last bite of donut, and with it, the image of Ochiko Uradaka's blush. Despite Uradaka being in a situation where she should have been more worried about herself, Deku could still feel her aura like the sun. She had been so happy to give him a green donut. It shouldn't have been this way. The shine in her eyes when she looked at him. Had anyone ever been so happy to see him? Kids and puppies got excited around him, but this was different. Way different. With a face like that, you'd think whatever made this person so happy must be wonderful beyond anyone's imagination. But she had been smiling at him. Deku couldn't find the words for what he felt. Giddy? Confused? He'd almost forgotten she was pregnant. Without a shadow of a doubt, her behavior was part coping mechanism, be it optimism or denial. But she was light years beyond a good mood. There had to be more to it than coping. Maybe hope and relief that she didn't have to be stuck alone with a baby. Or maybe she'd gotten used to assholes who treated her like a paper plate. No worries about cleaning up the mess when the thing was going into the trash. And she was happy someone had told her she was worth something. 10:10 a.m. He arrived at the rooftop entrance to Deku Hero Agency in Roppongi. 10:11 a.m. He stopped in the stairwell to collect himself before going into the office. A hand found his temple. Deku's stomach felt stuffed with cotton candy. He pulled out his phone, quickly sending another thank you for the donut, then bringing up Tsuyu again. Deku's last message to her hadn't gone through yet, but he typed out a new one, hoping for better luck. I just met with No. He froze, 3 letters into typing her name. She'd asked him to use her first name, which was both simple enough and distinctly personal, and also particularly tricky when he'd called her Uradaka for 5 years. Ochiko. He said it out loud for memory reinforcement. The concrete stairwell whispered it back, and it sounded exactly like what he should call her if they were dating. In these circumstances, what did dating even mean? Anyways, he deleted and retyped the last few letters. I just met with Ochiko at our agency. She was really happy to see me and says she wants to go on a date, so I think things are going well. He sent. I tried to bring up her job and the baby while I was there, but she cut me off. I imagine she's going through a lot and not ready to talk about it yet. Since she's already planning to quit, I'm certain I can talk her into taking maternity leave or resigning sooner. Anyways, do you have any suggestions of what she'd like the most for a date? I'd like to take her somewhere nice, preferably today, to have more time to talk. Deku held hope for a moment that his message would send, but the undelivered notification appeared soon enough. He pocketed his phone and headed downstairs. Ochiko's urge to hum out loud was almost overwhelming. Deku really had dropped by just to see her, and then a minute ago he'd said, "Thank you so much for thinking of me. I never knew homemade donuts were so good." It was irrefutable, in writing, from him, on her phone. Her belief-o-meter was up to maybe 8%. She felt like a yellow butterfly, and every now and then, like a snail squirming under a salt shaker. Not long after morning patrol, Gunhead hovered over her shoulder. There's something so special about friends from high school, her boss cooed. Everyone's still young and pure. You can reveal your true self without a care for the world. Ochiko's shoulders stiffened. You think so? Of course. Gunhead leaned in closer. So if it's just the two of you alone, what do you call him? Izuku? Or does he have a nickname? Izu? Zuku? Zuzu? She smiled, gripping her wrist hard. I just call him Deku. Gunhead slumped off. Professional. Ochiko stared at a fake plant in the corner, not mentioning that Deku's hero name had been his nickname first. With Gunhead out of range, the butterfly feeling found its way back, and she whispered another shush to the giggles in her chest. Was it strange that she needed to hide it? Ochiko had guarded her heart for so long that when something good happened, she could hardly believe it herself. But she knew the Gunhead agency by now. If she said a word about it at work, her feelings would be kicked around like a hacky sack. The news would get out eventually, but it didn't have to be today, right? Deku entered the office, a to-do list already running through his head. He wanted to be out of here in an hour and 20 minutes tops. What did he absolutely have to do today? He liked to keep an eye on general management without jumping in. The higher a hero rose in ranks and popularity, the more general business management was required. Or perhaps it was more accurate to say, if All Might hadn't personally directed Deku to financial advisors, reputable agents, and top-tier lawyers leading up to graduation, the business side of the hero industry would have eaten him alive. Forget trying to learn merchandise design, development, and distribution by himself. The squabbles with insurance companies over property damage would drive anyone insane. Commissions from arrests didn't come close to covering the salaries of the employees who handled daily affairs, much less rent for a mid-sized office in downtown Tokyo. Thus, the sponsorship deals, merchandising, and paid public appearances stepped in, though Deku hoped to rely a little less on being an advertisement by picking up some investment property. On and on it went. If he let it, the vampire that was general business management would sip and slurp away his minutes and hours until the day was over and he'd accomplished nothing. Fortunately, these matters were never true emergencies and could be put off or handled by his employees. His general assistant sat straight on the edge of her chair, as if in perpetual anticipation of someone coming in. Mrs. Naga, could you please reschedule my appointment with the Mori Hospitality Group? They'd been trying to sell Deku a partial interest in a hotel. Not happening today. I've confirmed a new date for Thursday the 16th. They're still hoping to give you a tour of the hotel renovations. Deku took an unplanned step back. Already? Mrs. Naga was sharp. But what was this premonition? Following your email yesterday, yes. Do you need to postpone further? Her fingers hovered between the keyboard and the phone. Yesterday? Yesterday felt like 100 years ago. For half a second, Deku racked his brain for why he canceled in the first place. Oh. It'd been after he'd visited Ochiko's agency, and she'd promised to call him today. No, that's next week, right? It'll work just fine. Deku nodded in thanks and started off to the locker room and stopped again. Actually, clear out anything non-essential through Friday. Understood. Naga breathed in, sitting up even straighter than before. Should I prep PR? No, it's personal, said Deku. He understood her concern. Scheduling conflicts occurred on occasion, but the last time Deku blanket canceled several days' worth of appointments was due to a multi-agency takedown of a drug trafficking gang. The following news coverage had the office swarming with activity for a week. He headed off for a quick shower and then changed into a suit for a meeting with the National Police Agency. During the briefing on nighttime crime statistics and reports of a vigilante hacker who had exposed a hero having an affair, Deku was distracted by the matcha-flavored sweets placed in small dishes along the table, which didn't compare to anything homemade. He asked to have the meeting notes emailed to him to check later. Due to other priorities, he declined an offer for lunch. So far, since Deku had left that morning, Ochiko's co-workers had enthusiastically recounted the pattern of coincidences of Deku meeting her at hero events, and loudly reminded her of the comments he used to leave on her pictures. When she refused to answer questions, Zip taught the intern how to search the security footage, with the practice task of spotting when Deku showed up on the roof. Yesterday, Ochako had abhorred every millisecond of the asinine pestering and told the other sidekicks to shut up already. There was absolutely nothing going on with her and Deku. Even with the buzz of excitement over Deku asking where she wanted to go on a date, Ochako had yet to retract her previous statement. They were at work. It was none of their business. She took a coffee break, taking the extra time to wipe down the break room and brew a new pot as an excuse to reread Deku's messages away from nosy grown men. Then it was back to her desk to send emails and process forms for a last-minute security detail request. Mid-ranked agencies pulled in a sizable revenue from event security. They were big enough to be trusted and small enough not to draw their own crowd and detract from the event. Walking back with a fresh cup of coffee, she heard the name Deku for the 100th time today, surprisingly from a computer speaker rather than a professional hero with nothing better to do. Hatchet had opened up a video and leaned back in his chair as a news anchor narrated the footage. Ochako paused to watch. Number 1 hero Deku arrives at Innovation Camp, a summer camp opening this year for quirkless children aged 7 to 15. The campers are watching. A loud drone of propellers rose as the camera zoomed in on a dot in the sky, where Deku was painted in bright red letters across the body of the helicopter. The door opened where it hovered, and Deku stood on the ledge in costume, grinning with confidence. He rocked back once and flung himself into the air. "I'd be dead if I jumped without a parachute," said Hatchet. "Depends on your quirk," said Ochako. "I'd probably be sick from floating myself after a big drop like that." "No kidding." Flaring with green energy, Deku aimed a finger at the ground and sent a rush of air to cushion his fall. He landed in a crouch and rose to the thrill of campers. He really knew how to work with kids. "That's from last year, isn't it?" asked Ochako. "Yeah, you've got a good memory. Guess you've watched it a couple of times?" said Hatchet. She pretended not to hear that. "I just remember that's when he made the donation to the camp." The video cut to Deku greeting the children, showing his gear and letting them look inside the helicopter, as the narrator emphasized the difficulties of quirkless children finding their way in a quirk-focused society. The amount was not stated, but Deku's donation guaranteed children would be able to attend camp regardless of finances at home. Ochako was about to walk away. She didn't want to talk too much about Deku, even if it was a video, but realized something. "Hatchet, isn't this my computer?" "It is." Hatchet swiveled in the chair, still watching children crawling over Deku. "I just happened to see your newsfeed was open and noticed that you've got way more Deku articles than I do." Ochako leaned in as he opened a new browser tab and showed the news articles that popped up. Deku was all over the page. "You don't get him all the time in the news?" she said. "No way, and this video's almost a year old," he said. "That's weird. But it auto-populates based on your search history, so if you can't keep yourself from checking up on him 10 times a day, of course you get—" "Move!" She deposited her coffee. "Him showing up in every other article, and you say there's nothing going on." Ochako pushed the back of her chair, tilting it forward to dump him out. "It's got nothing to do with you. Some of us have work to do." "You sure about that?" Hatchet stood with a smirk. "Number 1 hero keeps showing up. Who's gonna be dealing with the gossip magazines in a week? Everyone who works here." Giving the chair an extra shove, Ochako sent Hatchet back to his spot and closed the browser he'd used for snooping. "Also, there's the publicity from working with him or him showing up," Zip added from across the desk. "I bet we'll get booked up for event security. I just got in 2 more requests for August." "Are you kidding me?" said Hatchet. "Bet someone saw him yesterday or this morning and put it online," said Zip. "Say goodbye to your vacation." At that, Hatchet ran around to check Zip's computer, which he cursed at. "And we're getting booked up right after Silvertooth quit. If I wanted to work myself into the ground, I'd have applied somewhere else. See, Uravity? It's not just your business." Ochako flinched. She'd been anticipating some well-paid overtime. Spend enough time around Deku, and maybe you forget that people aren't supposed to work themselves into the ground. It shouldn't be that big of a deal if he shows up somewhere, she grumbled, taking a seat. Hatchet and Zip weren't wrong, though. Deku was more than just some guy. As much as he meant to her personally, he was Japan's #1 hero to everyone else, and Ochiko didn't need a mirror to know that she'd turned red. Tugging on his hair, Deku closed out of his search for fine dining in Tokyo. He'd been invited to several Michelin-star restaurants since his debut, and seeing couples there celebrating anniversaries and weddings had been his first thought for a date. But between privacy concerns, pregnancy-safe menus, and squeezing in a last-minute reservation, the whole idea felt stuffy. Some of them even had formal dress codes. If Ochiko didn't have something to wear, they'd have to rush to get it. Or worse, what if she thought she had something to wear, but it didn't fit? She wasn't quite showing yet, but her tight costume certainly wouldn't fit much longer. What was he doing? It was already 12 o'clock. He'd cleared his schedule and asked her to meet tonight. And now? His nervous tics were coming out, fingers drumming on his knee. He tried making a list of things she liked and broke the pencil lead. Deku was going into this blind, wasn't he? Most people wouldn't guess, with his #1 hero persona, that he'd never been on a date. Never had a girlfriend, and never kissed someone. And this was way more than an ordinary date. Now, with no room for trial and error, he had to nail it on the first shot. He checked their conversation again on his phone. She was clear to meet him tonight. He'd even asked, "Is there anywhere you'd like to go?" To which she said, "Anywhere with you would be fun." Heart emoji. Which was cute, considerate, and categorically false. Suppose he was taking her on a date under normal circumstances. Anywhere in public was impossible without a disguise, and those were never foolproof. Consider again the actual circumstances, and that he'd left her at her agency on active hero duty, if only for one more day because he didn't know what else to say. Deku needed to be seriously persuasive to get her to accept help, and actions spoke louder than words. This pregnancy shouldn't have happened to her. Deku didn't know the details of what transpired, but with alcohol, a man who'd probably forgotten about her already, and the consequences she had to be facing now, Deku could only think that she deserved so much better. Somehow, he was certain that if he had paid more attention to her, he would have noticed something long before she ended up pregnant. Maybe if he was a better friend. And yet, she'd been so happy to see him. She said she wanted to make him happy. Today, Deku needed her to know how important she was to him. He couldn't reclaim the opportunities he'd missed or undo what some asshole had done to her, but he could be there for her now in every way that mattered. He wanted to make her happy, so she wouldn't need to pull out a fake smile. Buying her a cheeseburger wouldn't cut it, which begged the question, what did? He had a decent idea of what she liked, but only second-hand knowledge of dating and not a whole lot of time. What in the world was he doing?